As shocking as the Odell Beckham trade was, something that made my jaw drop just as much was the fact that the Browns gave up Jabrill Peppers to the Giants. Obviously, Odell Beckham was the bigger name in that trade and the best player in that trade, but it was just surprising me that a team gave up such a young, talented player. I mean, that just doesn't happen too often. Peppers was drafted in the first round of the 2017 draft. However, in his rookie season, he wasn't really looking too promising. I mean, he clearly had talent, but he just seemed out of position constantly. But then last year, he more than made up for it, as he had a breakout year and really solidified that he's a great young player. One of the key ways he shined was in stopping the run. Like, take this play for example. Tampa Bay's at their own goal line, so it's very crucial for them to gain some yards. So one way they're going to do that is by double team both of Cleveland's interior linemen, and they're also going to send a tight end out to block a linebacker. They're going to send Mike Evans out to block another linebacker, and then they're going to send another tight end out to block the edge rusher right there. One thing you're going to want to notice is that there is a Brown completely unblocked on this play, as he is going to be on the outside of the play, and since Tampa Bay is just focused on gaining a couple of yards, they're not really going to be too concerned about him. However, since he ends up going right after the snap so quickly, this is now going to force Mike Evans to have to block him, and typically this wouldn't be the end of the world. You still end up getting a couple of yards, but look at how quickly Jabrill Peppers, who was the guy that Mike Evans was in charge of blocking, is going to run straight in on this play. He crashes in, and is a huge reason why Tampa Bay wasn't able to gain any yards on this play. It wasn't actually a safety. They did end up getting back to the 1 yard line. However, it was very close to a safety, and the Browns actually got a safety on the very next play, so that really was a big play by Peppers. Peppers really has the knack of finding a way to get into the play and being able to stop the run, and this play is a perfect example. As you see, what Tampa Bay is going to do here is double team a Cleveland edge rusher, then they're going to have a one-on-one matchup right there in the middle of the screen, and also double team a Cleveland interior lineman. And then, because of the numbers advantage, they can also double team the man at the top half of the screen, meaning that the next closest unblocked man is actually going to be Jabrill Peppers on this play. But the problem for Peppers, of course, is that he can't just rush straight in to get to the running back, because he also has to be playing man coverage against the receiver. He has to be aware of a potential pass and also be aware of a potential run, making this a very hard play for Peppers to make, and most safeties in this situation would just focus on the pass and not really be too concerned about a run, and trust that the linebackers could stop the run. But Jabrill Peppers isn't most safeties. He's going to very quickly read that it is a running play, rush over, and find a way to get into the play. That's something that's really important for a safety, especially if you're playing strong safety, as Peppers does often do, because it's so difficult to both cover a receiver and be aware of a potential run. Most guys can't do it. Like on this play, for example, it's pretty simple actually. They're kind of going to pick on Peppers here. Basically, the way this is going to work is Peppers is playing man coverage against O.J. Howard, and O.J. Howard is going to fake as though he's running a route straight down there. Because of that, basically Tampa Bay can send a halfback right to where Peppers was, and it should be an easy gain as Peppers has no choice but to follow Howard. Peppers is doing a fantastic job on this play. He's blocking Howard while making sure that he keeps an eye on the halfback. This way, if it is a run, then he can easily break out and stop the run, and if it is a pass, he trusts himself enough that he can still get back and make a play. And because it is a run, he's able to quickly get off that contact and make a play on the halfback for a minimal gain. I think part of the reason Peppers is able to do a lot of this stuff is because of how quick he runs. I mean, he accelerates so fast. I mean, he's basically like just a frog, just jumping from spot A to spot B, because he goes just so quickly. Like, if you take a look at this play, for example, Houston has a lot of one-on-one matchups across the board, and then their left guard in the middle of the screen is going to be in a zone blocking situation, and they're also going to pull their right guard over to the left side of the screen. Typically, when you pull a guard over like this, it's to give the guard a better angle to block a certain player. And also, if you want to pull a guard over, oftentimes you will do it against when there's a safety in the box, because typically safeties aren't as good at getting around blocks as linebackers are, so those are the guys you like to pick on. Then all the Texans would have to do is run their halfback past where Peppers was and pick up a ton of yards. So now if you take a look, that's pretty much where the one-on-one matchup is. It's the Texans' right guard taking on Peppers straight up, and this should be a bad situation for Peppers. I mean, I know the Texans' offensive line isn't great, but you still have an offensive lineman, which should be a very easy block for Houston. However, look at what Peppers does here. He's going to do a great job of getting very low. This completely clears out that lead block and allows other Cleveland defenders to get in the area and make a tackle. And they say low man always wins. Well, Peppers basically dove to the ground on this play. He basically was a tripwire, but it was a really smart play by him. I mean, obviously, you're not going to be able to beat an offensive lineman hitting him straight up, so go low, make sure the offensive lineman trips over you, and then your other guys can get into the play. Smart play by Peppers, and also shows how quick he is and how aware he is. So that's one of those plays that makes you really realize, okay, this guy is something special. This guy isn't just an okay defensive back. He clearly can play. One of the key things that I always talk about, and really that everyone always talks about in football when you're talking about stopping the run, is gap assignment. Make sure you stay in your gap assignment, because if you don't, that's how big runs happen. And Peppers does a very good job of staying in his gap assignment, but he also is able to make plays even when he's not in his gap assignment. And I'll show you what I mean with this play. If you take a look, what Houston's going to do is have a lot of one-on-one matchups across the board, and then they're going to pull a tight end over to the right side of the screen to block an edge rusher. So that's where Peppers is on the screen, and basically what he's in charge of stopping is that left side of the screen area. And as you see right now, he quickly reads that it is a pass and runs in to cover up his gap assignment. He does a great job of making sure that the Texans halfback can't run to where Peppers now is. So then what the halfback is going to do is try to pick up some yards to the right side of the screen. Peppers has already done his part at this point. Really what most players would do at this point is just trust their teammates to make the tackle. As you've done your part, you've made sure that the halfback can't run to where you are. So Peppers did the right thing here. But also, take a look at what he does after this. He's basically going to lunge out, still get a hand on the halfback, and help bring the halfback down. I'm not sure if this would have mattered too much, but it probably saved him a yard, and you know, 1 yard does build up after a while. Not to mention, if that other Brown missed his tackle, this could have resulted in a huge run. So it's definitely a great play by Peppers, and I think it really just shows not only can he guard his own gap assignment, but he basically extends that gap. Or I guess diminishes other gaps depending on how you look at it. But he basically extends the zone that he can cover, and that really helps in the running game. Like this play, for example, once again, there's going to be 2 double teams on the right side of the screen. And what's actually going to happen is the Texans are going to send their right tackle up to block a linebacker after he finishes off that double team. So as of right now, as long as everyone makes their blocks, this play should work out fine, right? Well, that doesn't exactly happen the way it's supposed to. One of the guys who has to make their blocks is actually not on the screen right now. If you take a look, Peppers basically comes out of nowhere. Hopkins was in the area, but what's really interesting to me is look at how fast Peppers realized this is a handoff. I mean, the handoff hasn't even happened yet, so how can you blame Hopkins for not blocking right away, when the reality is, there should have been no way for Peppers to realize that this is going to be a handoff. If this was play action, Cleveland would have been in trouble. However, Peppers probably just saw something on tape that made him realize, okay, they always run the ball in these types of situations, and then saw that situation and knew that they were running the ball. He was able to run in, make a play, and stop the run. And granted, the rest of the defensive line did a good job for Cleveland, so I'm not sure if that would have mattered too much. But again, I'm not showing the overall impact that Peppers had for the Cleveland defense. I'm showing how talented of a player Peppers is. So at this point, I think I've established that Peppers is good at stopping the run. I think we can all agree on that. But I think the counter argument to them trading to get Peppers, along with getting a first-round pick and a third-round pick, would be the fact that you just let Landon Collins walk in free agency last year. So why are you moving on from a box safety to get a box safety who can play slightly better in coverage? In my opinion, I actually agree with that take. I don't personally think that they should have let Landon Collins walk. I also don't agree that either one of these guys are strictly box safeties, but I do actually think that Peppers is highly underrated in coverage. I think he can play coverage fairly well. Like on this play, for example, it's going to be a cover 3 zone, and that's where Peppers is on the screen. It's worth noting that Peppers is on the line on this play, so typically for him to then get back in coverage is going to be very tough. But notice what he does here. He doesn't go too far. He doesn't break in too much. He doesn't fall for this play action, which a lot of players could do. He's simply going to stay with that tight end who's in that area, but he's also going to do a very good job of creating contact, which will slow the tight end down, and making sure that he keeps an eye on that quarterback in case he tries to run. This basically allows him to do 2 things at once. He covers up that tight end, and also makes sure that there isn't going to be a quarterback run on this play. Peppers can really be a factor in the passing game, and also, he's great at stopping screen passes, and this play was a perfect example of that. It's pretty simple, really. What Cincinnati's going to do is send a receiver out to block a defensive back, then they'll send a right tackle out to block another defensive back, and send a receiver up to the top half of the screen and then over to the right half of the screen to try to pick up some yards. It's pretty basic. You see Pittsburgh run these types of plays all the time. Nothing too fancy, really, but take a look at what Peppers is going to do here. Like a heat-seeking missile, he reads this play instantly, and there's absolutely nothing Cincinnati can do on this play. There's no time for the receiver to make a block, and there's also no time for the other receiver who had the ball to make a move. Peppers just runs in, breaks up the play, and honestly, Cincinnati was lucky this was only just a loss of a couple yards and not a turnover because of how quickly Peppers got there. Another thing that really impressed me about him was this was actually from week 17 of his rookie season, but this is a really impressive play, and I'll show you exactly what happened. That's where Peppers is on the screen, and his job is to guard the flat on the bottom half of the screen. That's what he's in charge of doing, but also, like some other plays I've showed you, he also has to be aware of a potential run, so he doesn't exactly know where he has to be on this play. So as you see, as of right now, he now instantly realizes that it's not a run, and he also knows that Pittsburgh has a receiver on that bottom half of the screen in the flat where he's in charge of guarding. But what I really like about him is look at where his head is facing. He's looking in the complete opposite direction of the quarterback. He's looking towards the receiver. He turned his shoulders towards the receiver, and to me, this is something that a lot of players, and especially a lot of young players, don't do often enough. You don't have to always be looking at the quarterback, especially when you have to get to a receiver quickly. This is the kind of thing you see in baseball all the time, where if the ball is hit over your head, you don't watch the ball the whole time. You run to a spot and then look up and see where the ball is. Well, this is kind of what Peppers is doing here. He's running to the receiver, then he's going to look up and see where the ball is, so to speak. Except, of course, in this analogy, instead of it being where the ball is, it's where the quarterback is going to be looking. And as you take a look now, it's actually going to get even more complicated, as the receiver is going to be running to the top half of the screen. So Peppers basically has to completely abandon where he was guarding, but again, that's okay because there is no stealer in that area, so he can abandon the flat on the bottom half of the screen, and he's going to break up to the top half of the screen to help cover up that receiver. The reason why he's going to do that is because, well, there's going to be a gap in coverage if he doesn't. While there is a safety right there, he is in charge of covering right there, meaning that basically that receiver is going to be wide open if Peppers doesn't go up and make a play. Peppers finally has time to turn his head around, and basically right when he does, he sees a ball right in the area and he's able to intercept it. While admittedly it's not quite as flashy as when someone jumps a curl route, this is to me a very impressive play. I mean, this is just hanging with the play the whole time and then finally being able to take advantage of it when it matters the most. It's insane concentration and also insane awareness of reading the play beforehand and realizing that there's going to be no receiver running to the bottom half of the screen except for the one receiver that he was chasing after, so he knows that he doesn't have to guard the flat, he can abandon his assignment, and ends up getting an interception out of it. He also can play a safety deep pretty decently. I mean, it's definitely not his strong suit. His strong suit definitely is strong safety, but I do think they can play a free safety role very well as well. Like on this play, it's going to be a cover 2 zone, and the Steelers have a route running right there, meaning that it will cross that gap in coverage right there, so that's where the Steelers are going to be looking to throw the ball to. So now if you take a look, my one nitpick on this play was that Peppers probably should have broken a little bit sooner. He probably was a little bit late on breaking in. However, plenty of safeties wouldn't break in at all. You see this all the time where safeties just play too passive, let the receiver catch the ball in front of them, and then just try to make a tackle. Peppers does break in and break up a pass that was admittedly a bit high, so who knows if he would have been able to break up a perfect pass. However, not a lot of passes are perfect, and he was able to break this one up, so I think you have to give credit to Peppers on this one. He's not exactly Earl Thomas in pass coverage. However, if you can be solid in pass coverage and great in stopping the run, that can be a very good thing for a football team. There's one last play I wanted to show you, and this is the play I've actually talked about in my last video I made about Jabrill Peppers. However, I'm going to show it again because back then I didn't have all 22 footage, now I do, so this will give you a better angle of showing the play. And also I have a lot more subscribers now than I did then, so I'm going to assume that most people haven't seen that video, or at least a good percentage of you haven't seen that video, so I'm going to show it again on this one. If you take a look here, it's going to be a cover 1 robber, and that's where Peppers is on the screen. So this is basically meaning that Peppers is the free safety on this one. This isn't Peppers looking to guard the run at all. If you take a look for Denver, this is actually a great situation for them, as those are the routes their receivers will be running, and typically against the cover 1 hole, you do want to take a shot deep towards the sidelines, as there is no one in that area, and it basically becomes one-on-one coverage. And also, it's especially good news because Peppers is lined up on the top half of the screen, and the routes are on the bottom half of the screen, so he now has even longer to go to try to get into the play. But if you take a look, Peppers is going to run to the bottom half of the screen almost instantly. A huge part of this is because he sees that Case Keenum is staring down that side of the screen. But again, this is still a great play by Peppers. He reads the quarterback and realizes that it probably is going to be a throw to the bottom half of the screen, so that's where he's going to break off and start to run too. Case Keenum actually makes the right read on this play and makes a pretty solid throw. It probably could have been a bit on a line more, but I mean, that's a very much of a nitpick. I mean, that was a pretty good throw and a great read from Keenum, but Peppers just made a better play. Jabrill Peppers isn't Odell Beckham Jr., so I definitely understand that Giants fans are going to be a bit disappointed about this trade, but I do think it should be mentioned that you can't take that out on Peppers. He didn't ask to get traded to the Giants, he just played good football and the Giants traded for him, so I definitely do feel a little bit bad for him in a sense, because he went from a team that was a complete garbage fire to turning it around and actually playing pretty decently well, and now getting traded to a team that appears to be a complete garbage fire once again. on paper, this isn't a bad trade from the Giants. I mean, they're getting basically what the Raiders got for Khalil Mack. You know, they got 2 first-round picks. The Giants are getting a first-round pick and Jabrill Peppers, who basically is the equivalent of a first-round pick. He has basically what you would consider mediocre first-round pick upside, I would say. I just don't understand why you make this move and also let Landon Collins walk. Why not just franchise tag him and then trade him? Or sign him to a contract and then trade him? I get that you don't want to have Collins and Peppers both be playing on the same team because they do both play very similar positions, and you probably do want a more traditional free safety back there, but they could have at least gotten some value back for him. At least that's my opinion. But hey, I'm definitely not an NFL GM, and there's a good chance they know something I don't know. So I'm more than willing to wait it out till next season and see how things work out for New York.